Anyone who knows me personally quite well will know of my great dedication to the Christmas season. As soon as October sort of starts to roll in and Netflix and the other streaming services begin to show the Christmas movies, I am delighted. And in fact, I try to carry that Christmas spirit anywhere I go. You can even see it in my nails. But I love the excitement of the season. I try to carry it with me. So I'm very dedicated to the Christmas movie genre, which I believe, I haven't really exegeted the very deep background of this, but I believe started around with the Hallmark movies. And they carry a certain theme, and they're pretty consistent. So if you live in New York City, because it turns out that we tend to be the focus of many of these movies, if you live in New York City and you're looking for love, apparently the key is that for some reason you are called to a small town in Canada, and it'll be at the end of November, very beginning of December, and you go to that small town and you reconnect with whoever you are, and there's snow on the ground, and somehow, over a cup of hot cocoa, at the Christmas village in the center of town, your love will come true to you, and you will find your one true love. So, I love this genre. It is my very favorite. Although one disrupted that came out on Netflix this year. It's called I Hate Christmas. I watched it. It's a little series. And something that the main character, who hadn't quite found the love of her life, she didn't live in New York City and she didn't go to Canada, so it didn't quite work the same way. They were in Italy. But anyway, she says, as she's looking at this beautiful nativity scene, a creche. She says, I wish that I were one of the characters in the creche, in the nativity, because at least then my place in the world would be fixed and I would know it. And that, I thought, might be an interesting starting space for a meditation today on our place in the world and where we may find ourselves as we take a look at the nativity scene just in our own mind's eye. Can you picture it? You can imagine, of course, just as we listened last week to Brittany Breathwaite's beautiful reflection on this, but you can imagine the story of Mary and Joseph having to figure out this very complex family situation. Pregnant, not by him, 13 years old or so, having to go to a new place fully with child. Traveling from one country basically to another, from Nazareth to Judah. And as they come into the town of Judah, into Bethlehem, with no hosts and no friends, with nowhere to go, but they had to go because the emperor was ridiculous. And they wind up in this little village. They make their way to wherever it was that they were able to birth. It says that there were cattle lowing and sheep, and I imagine field mice in the scene. People start to make their way as after Mary births this child in the scene. And they make their way to the scene. You hear about the shepherds who were called to be there. You hear about the magi who were called to be there. And so in your creche, however you might imagine that in your head, there are characters there. But what I would like to submit to you is that there is nothing about their story that is fixed. There was nothing about any component of what brought somebody to the nativity scene that we celebrate and worship in gratitude for today that was given. But in fact, God put a call on each person's life to make their way to come and worship Jesus, to come and pay homage, to bring their gifts, to acknowledge what was happening, and then eventually to depart and do the important things that they would do on their way. Each had a call, and then each had a purpose. But the creche is a helpful snapshot of a moment of holiness. And what I would love to submit to you is that I invite you to see this moment right here, right now, as a snapshot of a moment of holiness in your life. What do you see? Who's amongst you? maybe step back from that, and maybe not in this room, or maybe not in the room where you are right now, but just think of where you are in your life and who the characters are who have been called by God to be part of your story of holiness and of worship. Who has God put into your life? Who has God maybe helped you to not have in the scene? Because there are characters who did not belong in that scene, right? Like the king, lots of people. But who has God put into your life right now to be that blessing, to help to point you back to the holiness and the worthiness that you were born with? Because for unto us a child is born reminds us that he came into the world not to be so different from us. There are all kinds of, he could have come looking like an angel or something crazy. He came looking like a baby, looking just like you and me when we were born, slimy, crying, human, infleshed. This whole point shows us that as God came into the world to be with us, how we came into the world was holy too. And just as someone nurtured us in their arms, just as Mary did, in that snapshot of a moment, God reminds us that God is with us. Because all the characters in the scene we may know, but the one that we sometimes forget is that God was present too. And that is true for the snapshot of your life as well. For all the characters that have been put there, and all the characters who might not need to be there, and for all that you are carrying with you into that moment. God is with you. Emmanuel was born for you, to know that you are blessed. There is no difference between the blessing of Jesus at that birth and the blessing of you at yours. And so let this be a reminder that no matter what the moment has brought you, no matter what pain you have, no matter what challenges you may be thinking about tomorrow, you are in a moment right now that you have never seen before and never will again. And there are things in that snapshot to give thanks for. Sometimes it can be overwhelming to consider all that we have coming up. Anxiety does that. It takes us to where we aren't. But one of the gifts of the Nativity is that it reminds us to be still for just a moment, to take a look around us, to take in a deep breath, and to consider all that God is doing right here and right now. I don't know what tomorrow's going to do, and neither do you, but I do know right here, right now, I am full of blessing. May the reminder of the creche and this time of holiness and reflection give you that chance to pause and give thanks for every character in the scene, remembering that nothing about their story was fixed either. Neither is yours. It is a new beginning, a new day. Merry Christmas, church. Amen.